empowerment and joy. I've been reading recently Evelyn Underhill, who is a wonderful spiritual teacher from the early 1900s. She's writing about mysticism. And she tells a short little story about two people walking, eyes and no eyes. So no eyes is asked to take this walk. And so no eyes takes the walk and is very conscious of herself and is focused and goes on this walk very steadily, methodically. There's a field to the right or left of her. She's not aware of that. She's not aware of the sun or the breeze that's blowing through her hair. She steps around a muddy puddle, doesn't really see the light reflected in it. So she knows there's this world around her, but she's really focused on her walk, on what's hers to do, which is to walk. And she arrives in efficiency, on steadiness. And then Eyes is asked to take the same walk. As Eyes takes a step, she's inebriated by the light that surrounds and enfolds her. And as she takes her next step, she feels the breeze blowing through her and she's filled with delight. Every step is a revelation to her. She feels the fields to the right and left of her calling out to her, saying hello to her, calling forth, and experiences the divine mystery every step of the way. She sees the muddy puddle and the beautiful light reflected in it. Everything is a joy and delight. The effort it takes to make this walk is filled with joy as the mysteries of the universe are revealing themselves to her breath by breath and step by step. At the end of the walk, Eyes is talking to No Eyes, and No Eyes thinks she's nuts. She thinks she's actually just making all of this stuff up. This didn't really happen. That walk is just, it was effort, and there wasn't all this glorious, mysterious joy. Eyes realizes that there's nothing that she could say to explain it to No Eyes. The only way No Eyes is ever going to have that experience is if No Eyes opens her eyes. Evelyn's point is that we can't know the joy around us unless we do the work ourselves to open up and see it. Nobody can do it for us. We nurture the divine within us. She was I love her. She was strong. At the time of early 1900s, William James wrote a book called Variety of Religious Experiences. He's at Harvard, a professor. I've heard his book quoted, I can't tell you how many times. She, on the other hand, was very critical. And she said, well, it's nice that he wrote all these things, but he's never actually experienced it. And he has said he hasn't experienced it. Don't write about it. Discover it. Open ourselves to it. Open our eyes and have the direct contact. And that's what this joy is this joy is ever present, is always already. And what I love is that it's natural to who we are. This past week, a gentleman came back into my awareness. His name is Frank Marrero. I was introduced to him just over 10 years ago, and he's a school teacher. He's been a school teacher for 30, 40 years, and he's just come out with his book that based on all his years of teaching, mostly 4th to 6th graders. And it's called It's a Big Philosophy for Little Kids. And I had read through it 10 years ago, and now I was reading through it again, and I just love the stories, the philosophy, and I said, really, this is for big kids too. And one of his themes is teaching children the difference between deep, lasting happiness and short, temporary happiness. And so he gives them all these little exercises and stories from around the world of what the difference is. And the thing that continues to unfold as you're reading through these stories and lessons is how natural joy is. And he's teaching these children, when have you felt deep and abiding joy? Almost always out in nature, exploring a new river, that there's this continual delight that children have. We see it when they come up here. They're just, everything's sort of fun and playful. No one thing, he talks about when you get a present and how fun it is, but 2 months later you've lost interest in it. That's temporary happiness. We have our goals as adults. We have these things that we're clear that are going to make our life better. And when we get them, they do make our life better, but then we get used to it just as children, or it loses its interest. But this eternal happiness is within us, and it's available to us in every moment. And it's not some big thing that we have to achieve. It's already there. It's simple. It's effortless. It's our natural state to be in a state of joy when we allow ourselves to delight in every moment, where we let go of all these expectations of what life is supposed to look like and allow ourselves to delight in just what is. If we're focused on just the walk and getting there, we forget to enjoy just what is showing up in the moment. So I've been contemplating this lovely expression of joy, this experience, open-hearted of joy in every moment. And I was also, because I was reading about children, I was thinking about, and I've also been reading a book, that's actually another book, got lots of books around, it's a beautiful book of a minister, and he's talking about creating safety in a spiritual community, and one-on-one and collective, and it's so beautiful, and it's this one the whole book's not about this, but this one section on safety. So I was thinking a lot about safety. And we talk about children. Children really thrive and become fully who they are when they feel safe. I was thinking of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And safety is, right after food and shelter comes safety. So it's considered very essential. Self-actualization is at the top of this pyramid. And so to get to self-actualization, we need safety. And this book is talking all about safety. So I was thinking a lot about safety and joy. And I thought, well, do you need to feel safe? If for those of you who were here last week, I won't do it again, but I went through sort of all the things to be afraid of in our world today. There's a lot to be afraid of. There's a lot going on. Do we as adults feel safe in the world in which we live now? Do we need to feel safe before we can really relax and let go and let this bubbling joy overflow? I've even heard some people say they feel guilty feeling joy because they see all the terrible things and they shouldn't feel joy. We heal through joy. Do we need to feel safe to feel joy? And so I thought of the spiritual teacher, Hindu guru in Hindus, according to Hindus, is Amma. How many of you are familiar with Amma? Oh, most of you. Not everybody, so I'll share a little bit about Amma. Amma is, I think, sometimes referred to as the hugging guru, although I think that limits who she is. But the reason why they call her the hugging guru is because many Hindu teachers do something called darshan or shaktipa. They open up our always already enlightened state, which is pure joy, so they'll wake up. And many of them do it through touching or touching with a peacock feather. She hugs. She full-on gives you a full body hug. And it's beautiful. Jack and I and Julian have all received it twice now. She's here. She has ashrams all over, but she has an ashram here in San Ramon. And she works her organization feeds the homeless. They've created a college. She does a lot of things. Amma herself was raised in a small fishing village. I read a biography about her years ago, but I don't have it anymore, so this is all by memory. She grew up in a small fishing village in India, and it was a poor village. She didn't grow up with a lot of money. There were some people in the village far poorer than her, and she was aware of that. She also was abused. She was not safe in her world. And so what she used to do, being in a fishing village, she would just walk along the ocean, and she just gave her life to God. She became full-on devoted to the divine. I believe it was Krishna was the form because I think of the blue, was the form that she really gave herself completely to until she was absorbed by this love. Everything was given and expressed, and it was from this constant devotional energy towards Krishna that her divine being was woken up. And she has become fully herself. She didn't need to wait for conditions to change for her to become fully herself. She didn't need conditions on the outside to feel safe in order for her to experience a divine joy that is not of this world. Each and every one of us are the divine inheritors of joy. We are that joy now. It is our birthright. It is our inheritance. And we are here to claim and accept that always already joy that is not given from this world. And that is a truly bliss-filled experience and way to live. So what we want to do is empower ourselves and each other to become and awaken to this joy. I love in the poem that Cher read this morning at the very end, I don't remember the exact lines, but it was something along the line of joy that's not shared is cut in half. It's limited. And Frank Marrero, the one who wrote the Big Philosophy for Little Kids, says the same thing, that real eternal happiness is something that's shared. It's a relationship thing. There's very few people, I would say 2% of our population, who experience pure joy as hermits separate from the world. We are social beings. When we start to experience that bliss, the first thing we want to do is share it. And it doubles the joy. It expands the joy. So of course, Amma is going out and creating all these people to wake up to their joy, to allow this energy to open and expand and become more and more. So we don't want to hide our joy or feel guilty for the joy that we have. We are here to, every time we access it, to be a divine place for other people to feel their joy, to awaken to their joy. This is how we start shifting and healing our planet to become more and more of who we are already meant to be, is heaven on earth, is this divine energy. So we want to share joy for it to be fully realized. One of my favorite stories is Reverend Joan Stedman was a nun for 10 years, had then left, became married, had 2 kids, and then she returned to ministry and spiritual life through Agape, which is a center down in Los Angeles. She was part of Reverend Michael Beckwith's initial group of 20 people. She's now a minister up here for Agape Bay Area. Been meditating for 30 years, primarily Vipassana meditation. So there was somebody who knew both Alma and Reverend Joan and said, I want the 2 of you to meet. So they set up a meeting. Now, Reverend Joan didn't know who Alma was. She didn't know what she was known for. She just said, sure, I'll go. So when she meets Alma does what Alma does. You're sort of pushed into Alma. It's like you get a hug, but there's people there to push you into it. You get really shoved in there. Poor Julian, when he was a baby, she has very big breasts, and he couldn't breathe. But it was a beautiful experience. And so Joan goes and gets this hug from Alma, and then goes, do you want a hug from me now? And Alma's people were like, what? Because she's the guru. But the empowerment is to recognize there is equal joy in all of us. There is no hierarchy. And Joan didn't even occur to her that she didn't have just as much joy and love to give back to Alma as she has received from Alma. And this is the place that we are wanting to evolve as a planet, to recognize that every good thing that there is, this joy is inherent in all of us, right here and right now, equally. And we are here to find it within ourselves, to nurture it within ourselves, and to support others and celebrate others in finding the joy that is within them. I had an important conversation years ago that has made me think a lot about this idea of what really empowerment is. Its value, but also its limitations. This is when I was at the Agape community in Los Angeles, and I was having a conversation with some people of color from African Americans, and we were talking about the TV sitcom show Different Strokes. Most of you have heard that show, Different Strokes? So it was on in the late 70s, early 80s. It's about a billionaire, Mr. Drummond, who adopts 2 African American children who were very poor, and he adopts them and takes them into their house and helps them fulfill their dreams. And the people I were talking to say that's not a story that they particularly care for. They said that's sort of these white saviors coming in and saving us, the black community, and we need white people to save us. That's not a storyline that empowers us. It feels belittling, like we're all little children that need to be saved. That really stuck with me. And over the years, what's the idea that's really, as I think most of us know, has really come alive is the idea of allies. That we're not here to save each other. We are here to empower and be allies for one another to find our own interior joy, our own well-being. It's Gay Pride Month this month, and that is about people who are LGBTQ celebrating with pride who they are. They're not here to be saved. We're already glorious and magnificent, and we're going to stand in that after for so many decades being shoved off into a corner or feeling like we have to hide who we are. We stand with pride in who we are, and an ally would be someone who is straight, who says, well, I'm not part of that community, but I absolutely support your incredible and beautiful, unique way of expressing. Yes? And to me, this is what we're doing with every one of us, that this spiritual journey is hard. To really be able to flourish individually, we forget who we are. We have moments, man, yesterday when we were working with the lease, and it's going back and forth, and the people were moving, I'm like, just pray. I was leaning on that, because in that moment, I was in the stuff of the many Texans up and down, and so our board, there were people on our board praying, our practitioners were praying, there were people were moving, were praying. That's empowerment, that was ally, that was support, because in that moment, I was more caught up in the human experience. We need each other. I think of Mother Teresa, who I remember seeing a documentary of her years ago, back in the 80s, but done by PBS, of just her, it was a life of joy. It was something with the word joy in the title, and it was beautiful as they followed her to all the places of service that she's giving, and just this radiance and the power with which she does as she gives so much. And now we know years later, after she has made her transition, that she also had huge doubts, deep times of deep depression, where she wrote these letters to her spiritual guide and mentor, of, am I really doing Christ's work? Is this really working? We all go through that, whether it's just for a moment we forget who we are, or there could be long periods. And this to me is where we get into, we are here to empower, not to save. One of the things I have learned is when people come and are upset and hurt, often, me included, we want to think of that one thing or give them the one tool that's going to take that away. And so we're listening, we're thinking, oh, what's the tool that's going to really help this person for that suffering to stop, to make that shift? Because we often know that it's just a little shift of consciousness that needs to happen. But what I am learning, as having been on this now for 30 years, is that some of those deeper problems, they can go on for quite some time. And there isn't one thing to be said. The Savior is, I'm going to fix you. The empowerment says, I'm going to help you discover your own answers. That's what our practitioners do in this community. They don't meet with people one-on-one to say, here, I've got the answer for you, or I'm going to give you the perfect prayer and you're good. They're here to help us find our own joy, because that's where the empowerment, that becomes the place where we find our joy, is from within. This eternal, lasting joy is something that nobody can give to us. We can empower each other, we can be allies for one another, but nobody can give us that joy but ourselves. And that's what this growth that's happening, both collectively with groups that are stepping out and saying, we will find our own joy. We need the support. But the joy has to be found within. One of my favorite stories, and I have shared it before, I think I need to share it at least once a year, because it's an inspiration to me. And it's a story that I first heard through Frank, who wrote the Big Philosophy for Little Kids. So I'm aware of it again. So how many of you remember or have heard other places the story of Wilma Rudolph? Wilma Rudolph was the 22nd child in a family, African-American family in Tennessee, very poor in the 1930s or 40s. I think it's the 40s. And she got scarlet fever when she was little. They didn't expect her to live. She lived, but she contracted polio. They lived very far from a hospital, so they took a long trip into the hospital, which was only going to happen once or twice. They diagnosed her. They gave her crutches. And the nurse showed her mother, a.k.a. her mother, the nurse, in other words, the nurse empowered the mother with exercises. Here are some exercises that you can do for your daughter. They go back to their small town. Wilma is the youngest of 22. The mother doesn't have time to do these exercises every day, so she teaches Wilma the exercises until Wilma is now empowered to do the exercises for herself. It's up to her whether she does these exercises or not. It's her choice. But ultimately, she is empowered to make that choice for herself. She does the exercises. There are months where there's no sign that it's having any help at all. And then there are signs some days that it is working. So she keeps at it. Meanwhile, she often has to miss school. She certainly can't participate with all her friends who are out playing basketball and running around. She just will watch them and continue to do her own inner work, especially working with her legs. And it's painful. By the way, these exercises that she's doing for herself are painful. They're not fun. She doesn't have any stories of success that this actually works. They're just saying if there's anything that can work, it might be this. But we don't know. There's a lot of people who have polio for their whole life. Franklin Roosevelt lived around that same time. He had polio. Best doctors, best help in the world. Here she is in a small little village doing her little exercises. But when she's 12 years old, she's making progress, and she goes to her church. And nobody knows, but she surprises them, and she drops her crutches. She walks down the aisle, crutches free. She can walk. People are amazed. She's embraced. And she's finding this joy, this empowerment within her, this freedom that she's never known before. And she did it. She was supported by the people around her, but she did that work to find that inner joy, that inner light within her. And the glorious part of the story is that's not the end of it. She does get to play with her friends now, and she gets to run around with her friends, so much so that by age 16, she's in the World Olympics, wins the gold medal, and becomes the fastest woman in the world. 4 years after she lets go of her crutches. Nobody could have done that for her. We all have this infinite bliss. We all have been given the gold medal when we were born, and the gold medal is this inherited bliss and joy that we are walking around with inside of us every moment of every day. We are empowering each other to feel that joy, but ultimately we are the ones to nurture and access that joy as much as we possibly can. Yes, we want the external world and conditions to change, so that it's way more fun when conditions are good than bad. But regardless of what's happening out there, that joy, that gold medal of joy is always there, waiting for us to nurture it and celebrate it and see it and delight in it. In every conversation we have with a person, with every step that we take, we feel, I love that poem, I'll put it on our Facebook page if it's okay, to feel the blades of grass calling out and saying hello, feeling the joy in the chairs that are supporting you right now, that you're sitting on, feeling the joy of being in this space and knowing there's a church across the way and they're delighting in their joy, we are surrounded by this joyful presence, singing and celebrating, and we get to nurture that within ourselves. We are empowered, and just like Wilma Rudolph there, we might intentionally be doing that and go months without seeing or feeling that joy. I also was reading something by Julian of Norwich, who was asking about prayer to Jesus because she was having this vision. And Jesus said, even when you're not feeling the prayers, when they feel dry and barren, they are working. I hear them and feel them even when you do not. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, keep at it. This joy is already there. When we feel it or not, it is there, and we continue to show up even when it's hard, even when it doesn't feel good, and we will start to know the joy that is not of this world. It is our divine inherited gift, and that's why our Lighthouse presence is here. We are here to be that light within, first and foremost, and to shine that light out into the world wherever we go. We are here to be the joy in the midst of so many stories and conversations and collective unconscious energy of fear that is permeating our culture right now. We need to be in that place we don't need to be. We can choose. I'm not here to save you. here to empower us. We can choose to be and nurture this joy within us. And that starts with just acknowledging that it's there. How do we nurture that joy? It's going to be unique to each and every one of us. And that's what I love. For Wilma Rudolph, it was finding her ability to move her legs so she could run. It wasn't just sitting there knowing joy. It became a form of expression. It became something she wanted to do. We have people here who love to write poetry. We have people who love to do physical things. And we're multidimensional. We might like to do all of these things. We have people who love. I remember talking with my brother when he first became a management consultant. This is my oldest brother. And he was telling me about what he does, and he was so excited by it, about his work with these businesses. It brought him alive. Our joys are going to be completely unique to each of us, so I can't say, here's how you nurture the joy within you, but that joy is going to find its voice. As you continue to acknowledge that it's there and continue to give it space to express, it will find its voice through us. It can't help it. You have a unique way, and you can do the same thing. It's just like the two people walking the path, the no eyes and the eyes. We can do the exact same thing, but it's how we do it, how we show up. And then as we're showing up as joy, we start experiencing ourselves in new ways. We find things about ourselves that are completely new and enjoyable to discover. The people who were helping yesterday, the joy from which they served, they didn't have to do it. They could just sort of plunk the chairs down and just being efficient and got it done, or they can do it with lightness of being and great conversation with another. And David Schermerhorn came and he brought donuts for everybody. Just connecting. Look they're all sitting each other. Why? Because we connect. Because there is joy. We connect when we're in joy. So this is why I believe we're here, is to express this joy, to find this joy, to nurture this joy, and to be this joy. And that's why the Lighthouse, we're committed to empowering each other, because we all need each other. I need you. You need me and all of us and the practitioners, and we're all helping each other to be empowered to live from, through, and as this joy. So this week, my invitation is be conscious that you already have been given a gold medal. You already have received it. It's already there. You have the gold medal of joy, and it's yours to claim. Consciously commit to claiming the inherited joy that you have right now and see it everywhere you go. And by next week, I'm checking in on you. I want to hear. And we all want to hear. How is that joy showing up in your life? How are you experiencing joy? And it's always new. We'll pray in a minute, but it's always, I love Shunro Suzuki. He was a man of pure joy. And that joy, by the way, isn't always jumping up and down. He wasn't a comedian, but he was just joy. And one of my favorite things that he says, say yes to life, and then as soon as it gets old, say yes again to something new. Allow every moment to be new. Don't depend on what was just there, because what brings us joy is the constant, infinite newness of life. So even though you've come to this service before, even though you've sat in these chairs before, today's a new day. When we move on to the service, hey, we have Dwayne Day here. Every day is a new day. Allow this experience to be brand new. Allow your conversations after service to be brand new. Allow everything to be new, and let go of every experience you've ever had before in any church, in any spiritual community, and let this be a brand new experience, because that is spirit alive right here and right now. Let's pray. And so we just let go into the pure joy that already exists. We recognize that there's nothing that we need to do to make this joy happen. We are not creating joy. We are not forcing joy into our life. We just recognize the infinite smile that is everywhere. as well. This divine joy already knows everything is well, just as it is. It always has been, it always will be. That this divine presence is never limited by what is happening in form and its condition and this creative expression. It delights in the creative expression, but is never limited by this creative expression, ever. Nothing ever limits this joy that we are. No health condition, no emotional condition, no mental condition. It already exists in, through, and as each and every one of us. We are each made in the image and likeness of pure spirit. We are each made from and as pure, unlimited, unbounded joy. Our hearts cannot even contain the infinite joy that we are. We bask in the joy. We allow it to permeate every atom and cell of our being. We allow it to permeate our emotional life and our mental life. We allow it to permeate and fill into that deep soulfulness of being alive in form, that soulfulness that recognizes this infinite joy not only in the transcendent but in the immanent, to experience that joy in all of its delightful forms that surround and enfold us in every person with whom we come in contact. Their joy alights our joy, and our joy alights their joy. We delight in the communion that we feel even now in this room with the people to the right and left of us, in front of us and behind us. That these are our allies to support us in becoming the fullness of who and what we are. We are here to love and empower each other to become this pure, unlimited joy, uniquely as nobody else in this room. That is what's being called forth even now. We are absolutely free, each and every one of us, in this pure joy. We are being called by joy, are we answering to that joy, and we are the fulfillment of joy here and now. And so when we celebrate this in ourselves in the unique way it is expressing individually. We express it, enjoy it, the uniqueness of the Lighthouse Center for Spiritual Living in the beautiful way that it is expressing joy. We love and celebrate all those groups. We celebrate the LGBTQ community as they celebrate in joy and in pride. They're this unique collective experience. We celebrate every community, race, color, spiritual path, the joy that is uniquely expressing in these collective groups. We are all here to experience and express joy, and nothing can ever limit that joy. Nothing, no condition or circumstance can limit the joy that we are here and now today. We see it in ourselves, we see it in each other, we celebrate it, and we give thanks. For those who are now going through challenging times, we don't dismiss those challenging times. The joy within us allows us to be with those difficult times with a heart wide open, in trust and in faith that this too shall pass. And so we are fully present with every experience that is arising, knowing that everything, even no matter how hard it is, our hearts stay open, our bodies stay open, our minds stay open, because we know all of this human temporary experience will pass and return unto this infinite oceanic joy. Not through our will, not through forcing it, but it is inevitably who and what we are. We discover that over and over and over again on this beautiful journey of life. So for this journey, for our companionship with one another, for this interior commitment to being the magnificence of who we are and enjoying every minute of it, thank you, Divine Mother, Father, God. Thank you for the joy that is in the midst of the dark and the light, that can embrace all of it and be absolutely, solely, authentically present in that joy. We let our joy be seen. We let it be felt. We never apologize. We say thank you, thank you, thank you, knowing that the joy that we know now and always belongs to everybody equally. Everybody equally. Everybody equally. All life, all sentient life form. Joy is, joy is, joy is. We are. To God be the glory. We give thanks. We let this word be now. We let it be. I invite us all to say together now, and so it is. Amen and amen.
And so it